You always have my unspoken passion, though I might not seem to care. I don't want clever conversation. I never want to work hard. I just want someone that I can talk to. I want you just the way you are.
Billy Joel would be a rare reader, somebody who doesn't want clever conversation, who just wants the color of your hair. It's not exactly a reader that most of us would go after because they're not really looking for all that much. I used to believe that God inspired my words. I used to believe that written words were words written in stone. I used to believe that true ideas and true words came true. That once you wrote something, it was written. Now, I didn't hold on to this belief for very long, but as a very early writer, very early creative writer, one who's writing poetry, I just want it to be true to my art. And once I wrote something, I didn't want to go back to it. I've realized since then, and I think God realized also that was bullshit. That your first idea is not your best idea. Your first words are not your best words. Your first creation is not your best creation. And we only have to go and look at our religious stories to find out that God believes fully in revision. The world goes wrong. God sends a flood, destroys everything, and revises. The religion goes wrong, and God sends a prophet or a son to change things. God, if you believe in intelligent design, is a God who created a world that evolves and changes. Now, I don't necessarily believe in God, and I'm not trying to get religious here because God fired me a long time ago. So I'm really just using it as a way of thinking about the idea that our words are not inspired words by some mystical power around us that can't be changed. Our words are words we create to make something happen. And if that's the case, our words, like our minds, our bodies, our very selves, grow and develop. Revision is a part of who we are as people. What we do as people, it's part of our gods and the stories that we tell about gods. And it's a way that we get to clever conversation. Screw Billy Joel. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We need to think about revision. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm working today off of my word processing document, my pages, which is because I work on a Mac. So it may look a little bit different than Microsoft Word. And what I'm going to show you today is my pages document because, that we're writers. So we need to think about working within documents. And what I want us to think about is, what does it mean to revise? And why should we work on revision? The first thing to say about this is, if your writing is a craft and not just something you do because you got drunk and you wrote some words down, or not just something you do because you have an emotion and you want to express it, or not just something you do because you have a memory and you want to preserve it. If writing is a craft where you want to create something for other people, and you want to revise, to develop it and refine it so that it is something emotional, or I'm sorry, something that is effective, something that is affective, something that is provides emotion or meaning or imagery or ideas. If you are using writing to do something in this world, then it has to be a craft, and it has to you have to engage with revision, because you're not that smart, and I'm not that smart, and God is not that smart to create something perfect the first time. It may sound heretical because everybody knows that I am that smart, but it's not, because even God in every religious story there is goes through revision. Steps to revision. First, read what you've written. Actually read it. Don't skim it. Don't know what you wrote and guess what the next comes next. Read it. Listen to it. And here's a really good way to do that. You have a phone. Record what you've written into the phone, reading it with your voice, and then listen. Envision your readers doing the same. What do they see? What do they hear when they are reading your text? And then after you've envisioned those readers, reread and re-listen. Really think about, is this the way that you want this piece to go? Is this the way you want to say this? Is this the meaning you want to get to? And after you've done that, you've read, you've listened, you've envisioned your readers, you've reread, you've re-listened, feel what you've written. Write what you want to write and change what you need to change. All right, that's just some bullshit. I mean, it's real, but it doesn't really help you with revision. So what is revision? How do we do it? Well, when you revise something, you are going to something that you've created, and you are looking at it to see, where does it need work? Where does it need development? Where do I need to put some emphasis to rewrite it? So let's look at some real steps to revision. First, duplicate your draft. I can't stress this enough. As a writer, if you go through my, and I don't know where they are right now, but if you go through the box where my notebooks are, you will find 20 different notebooks in there of different things that I've written over the years. Now, I haven't looked at them in years, but I know that they're there. And as a writer, it's kind of like that gives me a cushion, a space to be, that I know where I've been and I know where I'm going. But when those notebooks are live, when I'm actually working in them, I keep drafts so that I know where I've been with a piece and where I'm going. And on your computer, since most everything we do now is digital, you should keep multiple drafts of everything you write. Draft one and number them and label them. Draft one, draft two, draft three, or date them so that you know where a piece has come from and where it's gone. You never want to delete a draft, because you may write something, revise it, take something out, and then need to go back and put that back in, or you may want to save that line for later. So duplicate your draft and keep multiple drafts of things. That's the first step. Second, print it out or get a really good interactive word processing program where you can read what you've written with a pen and mark it up. And that's just a matter of hearing your language and seeing your language and then marking your language with notes for what you might want to change. Next, consider your workshop comments. Now, this is a good point for me to stop and talk about workshop. Y'all need to workshop. Your comments are okay. You're really being supportive of each other, and I love that. Thank you so much for that. But y'all need to workshop. And that means putting some critical comments, some critical consideration of the things that were written. What's working and what's not? What was a good image and what wasn't? What needs more description and what needs some description taken out? In your workshop, you should be offering not just support and praise, but you should offer some comments about what was actually working and not working, and help each other develop your writing. I didn't see a whole lot of critical comments, and I'm not saying negative comments. I'm saying critical. That is, somebody analyzed your writing and gave you feedback on it. I didn't see a whole lot of that going on in our first workshop. Hopefully that's going to happen more in our second workshop. But what you should do is consider your workshop comments when you go to revise. Now, Joe over here says that your piece is great, but you need to work on your color imagery. There's not enough color going on there, and he'd really like some color. Amy over here says your piece is great, but she really doesn't feel like you're considering the emotions of all your characters, and they're some of them feel kind of fake and shallow. And um, uh, Jason over here feels like your piece is great. Notice that they're all saying that it's great because that's what we do. You don't have to say something's great in a workshop. You can just say, I read your this and I felt like this. You can just respond. Jason over here says, your piece is great, but it really thinks it's not being politically aware enough of your readers' interests and politics, and you should consider that more. You read all these comments, and then maybe you say, okay, I kind of agree with Jason, and I'm not sure how I feel about Jasmine's idea. And then Zainab's idea was really good, but I don't feel like that she's really writing about my writing. She's writing about her own. You consider your comments and think about how they might impact your writing. I wouldn't change anything just because somebody says to change it, but you consider it as a reflection of one of your readers on your writing. And what do you look at when you're revising? There's a number of different things that a creative writer works at, revises. And I'm just going to go through some of them real quickly here. You revise for language. How do your words sound on the page? How do they sound in your ear? How will they sound to your readers? So you listen for awkwardness or vague language or sentences that don't sound right. Remember, part of creative writing is trying to get to a level of language where you're doing something with your language. You're making people feel something. So revise for language. And that might mean when you're reading through your draft, highlighting or underlining those sentences that you want to go back and revisit. Revise for plot. Notice I said language first, because if your language sucks, if your language isn't engaging your reader, that's the first thing you need to work on, because in creative writing, language is our first art. Next, revise for plot. Now, if you're writing a poem, you may not have a plot, but even a poem has its own plot, its own way of dealing with narrative or ideas. Revise for plot and make sure that what you've plotted makes sense from start to finish. The way the piece develops from start to finish. That might mean thinking more about whether or not you want to include this detail at the end of the story or at the beginning of the story, or you want to tell this piece of information as through dialogue or through action. The next is revise for characters. Look at each of the characters that are in your piece of writing. And again, even in poetry, the characters may be the speaker, or the reader may even be a character. Revise for characters and make sure you're being true to those characters. Not every character needs to be developed. Not every character needs to be full, but every character should feel real. Number 7, revise for detail. Readers love details, and make sure you've got enough good detail in there. Or maybe you've got too much detail. Maybe you want to pare it down and spare your readers from going through too much stuff just to get to your ideas. Number 8, revise for imagery. And it really depends on what kind of writer you are, how you're using imagery, but you want to make sure that your images are actually evoking the ideas, the meanings, the feelings that you want your readers to have. So go through your writing and see where you're using metaphors or similes or even just colors and descriptions, making your readers feel something. Number 9, revise for meaning. Now, this one's kind of tricky. Not every writer writes with a clear meaning in their mind. Maybe you don't know what your argument was in your story or your poem, but you should think a little bit more about it. Ultimately, when a reader gets done with your writing, do they get a meaning that you want them to get? Number 10, revise for logic. Is the logic of your writing there with the logic of your readers? Are you telling them what they need to know? Are you showing them what they need to see? Are you making them experience what you want them to experience? But also, is it happening in a logical way? There's nothing that gets me more in a story where it's really sloppy logic, or where a writer assumes something that I haven't gotten, or that I think that they're assuming, and then a story falls apart for me. Revise for your readers. Think more about who your specific readers are and how your writing is affecting them, and then engage in revision that will help you reach your readers more closely. Language, plot, characters, details, imagery, meaning, logic, readers. When you're working on revision, you're trying to take whatever it is that you've written and develop it so that it becomes something new, something better, something stronger, something more effective. After you've thought about that some, reread and edit. That's the first time I've really mentioned that word, editing. But writing, you do want to do some editing. You want to make sure that it sounds and looks the way that you want it to sound and look, according to some kind of standard of grammar or formatting within the audience that you're choosing. So editing comes last, though. It's the last thing you should worry about. The first thing you should worry about is just writing. The second thing you should worry about is what is it that you're writing and how are you doing it? And then you should worry about revision. Save your new draft with a new name. Make sure you are saving that draft. A god does not destroy a world and rebuild a new one, or does not destroy parts of the world to rebuild parts of the world because she has nothing better to do. She does it because she has a new idea, or has a more clear idea. She has a better idea on how to make that world work. When you write, you are a god. Now, again, I don't mean that heretically. You are the master of this piece that you're creating. And it's up to you to go and revise parts, to revise that piece, to make it more effective, more beautiful, more meaningful, to make it work. I don't want to spend a whole lot more time here, but I do want to show you a poem that I just wrote this afternoon. I haven't even looked at it. I just wrote the words. And I know that this is not the form the poem will take in the end. And that's part of the reason why I wrote a poem this afternoon. But I wanted to share it with you because I want to have you think about, watch me revise at least a couple of stanzas here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the poem. Because I don't want to mess. What happened? Oh, no. Where did my draft go? Let me go back. Okay, there it is. I'm going to duplicate the poem, and now I'm going to work on revision. So let me increase the font size here so you can see better what's going on. I'm just going to read the poem out loud because I haven't read it either. And I wanted to then work on a couple of lines of revision here just to show you a couple of things that I think about. The books must be moved again, she said. Another room remade, another space revised. And so we must armful by armful tote books from room to room and revisit the truths of our past. Even as I'm reading it, this sounds a little hokey, a little bit over the top for what I generally do in my poetry. So I know revision's coming. Books are not photos. They are not so precise, but they carry the ghosts of our dreams, hopes, and plans, the homeowner's guide to plumbing, being and time, writing down the bones. Here is a whole dissertation, unwritten between others' pages. Here, a vacation we never took. Here, that diet that worked and then didn't. And then past dalliances, the beachside reading of Neruda, the coffee stain on Baldwin, the love that emanates still from these tender buttons. how these encounters haunt our attic and now our office, how they wait and kiss again. There is a contemplative moment in a chore, and though our two kids wonder why, we still read paper as they cart the weight of our lives through the dust, down the stairs, past the dog, the physicality of moving from room to room with book upon book upon book upon book upon book upon makes them understand a little the joy of holding and reading while little hands turn the pages. I'm not very satisfied with this poem right now. And again, I'm probably never very satisfied with poems. I'm going to change some of the fonts because some of the lines got messed up. But I do think that there's a little bit of potential here for a poem. I mean, that's one of the first decisions you have to make upon revision is, can this thing be saved? Can the thing that you've written really work? And I do think there's a little bit of potential here. It's a little bit hokey, maybe a little too easy to write about books as carrying memories, but there is something that I could work on. I think first, right off, the books must be moved again, she said. There's a hint of narrative there that I don't really get to, something my wife is making me do. And I also don't like to make it look like I'm a henpecked husband who just does what his wife says, because I don't like that image of women. So I'm going to take that out. Let me see if it works now. Another room remade, another space revised. So we must armful by armful tote books from room to room and revisit the truths of our past. You know what? I'm going to clean this up a little bit because I think it's just trying to do too much. So I'm going to take out the room and space. I'm going to start with we must, and then I'm going to actually take out armful by armful because I don't think that sounds right. It doesn't sound very poetic. We tote books from room to room and revisit the truths of our past. Just those couple changes, I think, makes that first stanza much more effective, much stronger. I mean, maybe there's some story there that I might want to tell, but I also just want to write a poem here that reflects on the idea of books carrying our past. So I'm taking that other stuff out. Maybe I'll tell that story at another time. Books are not photos. They are not so precise, but they carry the ghosts of our dreams, hopes, and plans. I'm going to take out the photos idea. And I'm going to change it to books carry the ghosts of dream. And I'll keep ours. Books carry the ghosts of our dreams, hopes, and plans. The Homeowner's Guide to Plumbing, Being in Time, Writing Down the Bones. You know what I'm going to do? I think I might want to play with my titles of books that I choose there a little bit more. These are obviously all titles. So I'm going to put a comment here for myself. Rethink book titles. There might be something more creative that I could do with those titles to make the poem work better. Here is a whole dissertation unwritten between others' pages. I kind of like that idea. And that's a little bit of an insider information. It's a idea that I've got multiple dissertations that I tried to write before I actually finished one. And I've got a whole lot of books for each of those dissertations that I tried to write. So I like having that in there. Here is a whole dissertation unwritten between others' pages. Here, a vacation we never took. Here, that diet that worked, then didn't. I'm not a great punctuation user in poems. I often don't like punctuation, but I'm gonna put that in there. Here, that diet that worked, then didn't. I actually like the stanza. And then past dalliances, the beachside reading of Neruda, the coffee stain on Baldwin, the love that still emanates from these tender buttons. How these encounters haunt our attic and now our office, how they wait to kiss again. Yeah, I think that works. I'm not sure. It's getting a little bit hokey for me, but it sort of works. There is a contemplative moment in a chore. And though our two kids wonder why we still read paper as they cart the weight of our lives through dust and down the stairs past the dog, the physicality of moving from room to room with book upon book upon book upon book upon, make them understand a little joy of holding and reading while little hands. This is getting, that's way too much. I'm going to now do what I often do when I've got writing I don't know what to do with. I'm just going to move that past and see what I've come up with just what I've got so far. We tote books from room to room and revisit the truths of our past. Books carry the ghosts of our dreams, hopes, and plans. The Homeowner's Guide to Plumbing, Being in Time, Writing Down the Bones. Here is a whole dissertation unwritten between others' pages. Here a vacation we never took. Here that diet that worked then didn't. And then past dalliances, the beachside reading of Neruda, the coffee stain on Baldwin, the love that emanates from these still from these tender buttons, how these encounters haunt our attic and now our office, how they wait to kiss again. It's getting there. I think there should be probably some other stanza here, but this is getting there. I don't like what I came up with here, but this is getting somewhere. The idea of sharing this with you is for you to think about how you go about looking at a piece of writing that you've done and remaking it, revising it. And let's just think about that word. A vision is something that comes down upon you, something you experience. It's something you see, obviously, but it's also got this spiritual sense. I had a vision, it came upon me. A revision is where you go and try to capture that original feeling and try to develop and revise to make it into another visionary moment. Maybe this time a visionary moment for your readers. If a God can change the world, you can change your story. Go ye therefore into the world and revise. Go ye therefore into your documents and revise. Thanks for being here today. We'll see you next time. I always stop talking before I'm ready to actually stop the recording. Revise.